500 days into the war, and we're joined by Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, Foreign Ministry Special Envoy and former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Fleur, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
So 500 days today, you know, it's hard to explain the mixed emotions here in Israel today. But can you try to give our viewers a sense of what Israelis are experiencing today, sort of the mood in the country today?
Well, I think that it's trauma and disbelief. Disbelief that 500 days after the worst attack that has ever been seen in Israeli sovereign territory, we're still here. There are still hostages that haven't returned home. Hamas is still on its feet. It's almost unbelievable that we've practically destroyed Hezbollah. The Syrian government of Assad has toppled down. And yet here we still are trying to get our hostages home. So I think there's trauma, there's exhaustion, there's sadness, there's disbelief. And for us, 500 days is bad enough. But imagine if you're in a dungeon and you've been there for 500 days, it's like being there in eternity.
Absolutely. And now we're seeing a push for phase 2 of the talks underway. Many here in Israel, even President Trump himself, have expressed skepticism about this second phase. I mean, what is happening now? Are we going to try and see perhaps phase 1 extended? And is Israel willing to make any further concessions to Hamas?
Well, I think it's not even about concessions anymore. I don't think how many more concessions could we have given. We're leaving the Netzarim crossing, which is the crossing between south and north of Gaza, essentially letting Hamas go back in there. We've given back murderous terrorists, 30 to 40 to 50 per hostage. And so I don't see what more we can concede on. But I think President Trump is correct in the sense that he doesn't want this drib-drabbing of hostages coming out, a few every week, 3 every week. That's national torture. He's saying, well, why can't you get more out quicker? And why can't the second stage be a continuation of the first stage? And I think he's right. And I think he's also pushed up the stakes for Hamas, because now they're not only talking about Hamas staying in power. I think it's very clear to everyone Hamas can't stay in power. But the question now is, who's going to control Gaza after Hamas? And I think by pushing up those stakes, he's making it, please God, more likely for the hostages to come home, all of them.
Mm-hmm. And what about his promise that all hell is going to break out if the hostages aren't returned? Why is Israel hesitating here to carry this out?
Well, you know, when you're in government, you can never win. If Netanyahu would have said, okay, I'm going with President Trump's all hell, we would have gone back to full-scale war, and we may have never gotten any hostages out. And so when we knew we had the lives of those 3 hostages, plus the rest of them that are supposed to come out on stage 1, I think the responsible thing that Netanyahu did was to try and make sure that Hamas actually complied with the deal that they signed, rather than let all hell break loose. I think President Trump was very clear that it was in Israel's hand, and he achieved the result, because remember that last week on Tuesday or Wednesday, Hamas said they weren't going to be releasing those 3 hostages. So whatever it is that Trump said, however it is he said it, it worked to at least get the first phase of the deal back on track.
Mm-hmm. At 500 days in, you know, we have to mention the fact as well that there's a new president in the White House, President Trump. He's, you know, hit the ground running. He's placed immense pressure on Egypt, on Jordan, and on the Arab world as well to take in Palestinians from Gaza. He's put forward this plan, and now we're seeing sort of a new Egyptian plan beginning to formulate as well. Do you think Trump's Gaza plan is likely to be implemented? Has this all been a bargaining tactic? I mean, what can we expect moving forward?
Well, whatever it is that he did. He changed the conversation, and he opened the conversation about the day after in Gaza. Remember that before that, when we were seeing the scenes of these hostages coming home emaciated, looking like Holocaust survivors, we had kind of wouldn't dare, nobody was daring to say the obvious, which is that Hamas cannot rule Gaza the day after, even when we saw them on their feet. And then Trump came and said, not only are they not going to rule Gaza, but we're going to rule Gaza. And the UAE ambassador, Yusuf Al-Otaiba, said very clearly on TV, well, Trump's plan is the only plan. If anybody else has a plan, go ahead. And then what happens? Egypt comes up with a plan. And then yesterday, what do we hear? Saudi Arabia has a plan. So whatever it is that President Trump did, he changed the conversation. He made it perfectly clear to the entire Arab world that Israel will not tolerate, and America will not tolerate Israel living next to the rule of Hamas. And all of a sudden, everybody's laughing at his plan one minute, and everybody's coming up with different plans the next minute. So he actually moved something.
And that's certainly what we need right now. Fleur, thank you so much for your analysis today.
Thank you so much.